Hi, I'm Trisha Caspers. I'm the founding editor of West Trestle Review, and welcome to Silver Tongue Saturdays. I'm super happy that you're here. If you could all make sure that your cell phones are silent, that would be fantastic. There is a bathroom out the door and past the stairs and to the right. And there are masks and hand sanitizer in the back. And also, if you wanted to sign up for the open mic, there's a sign-up sheet on the little table by the door if you're interested in that. The open mic will not be recorded, so you can, I guess, feel however about that you want to. And let's see, if you are not following West Trestle Review, follow us online. It's westtrestlreview.com. The name comes from the train trestle that is going over Highway 80 as you go out of town, out of Auburn. And we are on social media. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. So you can follow us in all the places so you know what's coming up in the future. We do have another reading, another Silver Tongue Saturdays on Saturday, July 1st at 5 p.m. That'll be Kim Kralowick. And then we have an online celebration of West Trestlers. That will be at 4 p.m. on Sunday, July 16th, and it's going to be a whole bunch of different poets or fiction writers we've published throughout the years. And then our next next issue is going to be out. We're taking a little break because we're tired. But our next issue is going to be out in September and October. But if you haven't seen our current issue, it is fantastic, and I highly recommend that you read it. It's beautiful, and it has amazing art by local Sacramento artist Jennifer Pert. So check that out. But today we are welcoming Molly Fisk, and I'm so happy that Molly is here. So I grew up in Auburn, and I wrote poetry alone in my bedroom. I didn't know that there were living poets in the world. I certainly didn't know that there was anybody living anywhere near me. And so I remember hearing Molly read years ago in San Francisco, and realizing that she lived so close to my hometown, and it just made me so happy to know that, that there are poets in the world doing their thing so close to where I grew up and where I felt like I was the only one being, poetic. So, yay, Molly's here. Let me tell you a little bit about Molly. Molly Fisk edited California Fire and Water, a Climate Crisis Anthology, with a Poets Laureate Fellowship from the Academy of American Poets when she was Poet Laureate of Nevada County, California. She also won grants from the NEA, the California Arts Council, and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Her most recent poetry collection is The More Difficult Beauty. Her latest book of radio commentary, she's on KVMR, so if you haven't heard, you gotta listen, is Everything But the Kitchen Skunk. Fisk lives in the Sierra foothills, and you can find out more about her at mollyfisk.com. Thanks, Molly. Let's give her a big
You knew me when I was young and sane. All right, this is the famous black thing that will make everything worse. I've been warned. There are always people who sit in the very back. It's just like grammar school. Hello. Can you hear me back there? Good. Raise your hand if I start muttering or something. Well, I met Trisha because a mutual friend of ours wanted to give me her book, and she kept not sending it and not sending it. I think it was on her kitchen table. And she didn't send it so often that she finally came to visit Trisha and gave it to Trisha and made Trisha drive it to my house. So that's how I met her, at my own house, with a book. I kind of put this reading together. Thank you for coming, by the way. I put this reading together, basing it on a few things like trestle, and Auburn has a river, sort of, down the hill, the American River. So I always do this on the day of, because if I don't, I'm in one mood when I put the reading together, and then I come to do the reading and I feel like an idiot. So it helps me to be in the same mood that I put it together when I actually read it. So I'm going to read you some poems that are new and some poems that are from each of my two books. One was published in 2000 and the other in 2010, and you may have noticed that 2020 has gone past us. And I have a bunch of books out begging for publishers, but so far none of them has, like a trout, been caught on anybody's hook. But someday they will be, and then I'll sell them to you. This is called Midnight, and it's the only poem with a train in it that I've ever written, apparently. I couldn't find any others. And I love that trestle. And trestle is a beautiful word with two T's. Trestle. This is called Midnight. I was the girl who grew up and went as far from home as she could travel, to the country her father loved the most, walked down its narrow roads, leaned back into the cracked leather seats of its hurrying trains. The girl who watched mountains tick by in all-night twilight, framed in the windows like photographs, her fingers laced in her quiet lap, coat folded under a tired cheek against the blinking glass. See how she carries it like a blessing, the weariness of those who can't go back, who go on, trying to balance rebellion and obedience. Like the good child in a fairy tale, she found what she was sent for, loneliness and humor, her vast inheritance. She found color, and it moved her. Black peaks with their ragged shoulders pressed into an orange sky. Two women on the platform, a red scarf binds the tall one's hair, both heads suddenly thrown back in laughter. The shaded green of northern summer, and in winter, snow as blue and white as snow. A flock of yellow-shuttered houses on a hillside, squat, impassive, perched like seagulls waiting out a storm. And the light, endless light, the kind of light you long for, path to heaven, all your days torn from their edges, the flowers bowing beside the tracks, open their faces to it at midnight. I lived in Norway for a year, and I didn't write. I wasn't a writer till much later, but I remembered all these things when I started writing, and that was about a train trip I took in northern Norway. So, and you're welcome to clap before, during, and after all the poems. But you're also welcome to wait till the end if you feel like it. People have sort of ideas about this, and I don't have any ideas about it. But if you weren't to clap at all, I would be so sad. This is called American River, and it comes from a raft trip I took as a teacher of poetry probably 20 years ago, with actual students in the raft also. One of them almost drowned, but not quite. And we were on the river for 3 days. So there are 3 sections. American River. The sound of 1,000 separate sounds made anew by different water, not the water we paddled through, which is far downstream, slapping the rocks of our afternoon. The lower rapids gurgle high, while the upper echo a deeper tone. Nothing is singular. Everything here is a multitude, simultaneous, an explosion, percussive and sparkling, song of 1,000 remembered rivers, rasp of 1,000 shifted stones. 2. Alder and willow, and up a little farther on the hill, sugar pine's lacy outline. Always oaks and the dry brown grass of a western summer. Two little tweedly birds in the bush I wouldn't know, even if I held them in my hands. The way birdsong sounds like metal scraping briefly against something hard. Lapping backwater rocking the boat, and blackberries, the eating of which brings us back to the fold of our brothers and sisters, the sweet-toothed bears. Air quick against skin recently drenched with emerald river. The white flowers of rapids to come, blossoming, blossoming. The merganser says not now, and hunkers closer to her rock mid-river, her red neck and head indivisible from granite, her buff breast feathers unseen. 3 turtles on a log, motionless until the very last minute. Not here, they grumble and slide under green glass, and ore parts their log's reflection. Not me, whispers the brown trout, switching his tail faster than sight and ducking under a shelf into the dim reaches. And the alder leaves flicker in a hot July breeze. Listen, listen. And this poem, which is called Listen, is forthcoming in West Trussell Review after the very tired people who run it have a rest and then publish it in September or October, or both. And this is the beginning of somewhat of a waterfall of apple poems. Listen. When you have nothing left to say, the apples are still growing. You would call it silently because you can't hear them, but who knows how loud they sound to the ants, herding their aphids onto the peony buds just below. What do the towhees think of that green music? Is there a shimmer of plums, an echo of pears expanding? What else have you assumed you understood and been mistaken? What swells secretly beside you? Is it hope? Thank you for taking that poem. And I try to read new poems at a reading because there's something about finding out what works and what doesn't work in a poem that only can be found in this setting. I can't read it to friends. I can't read it to my cats. I can't read it out loud in the car or anything like that. There's some weird chemistry of an audience and me pretending I'm an authority about something and saying the thing out loud. I don't know what it is, and I learned this, I found this out myself, but then Robert Hass, who's extremely famous and was the Poet Laureate of the United States, also said it, so I feel like it's something that poets sometimes know. This is called The Apple Orchards of Sebastopol, and Sebastopol is said differently from how it is spelled. You probably already know this. It only has one O at the end before the L, but everybody who lives there says pool instead of pole, and I have no idea why. The Apple Orchards of Sebastopol. I woke in the dark and watched light rise up behind the trees, pale gray to a backlit lemon yellow, turning gold, and unlikely blue, the colors blossoming, taking on intensity, black-green cedars, neon new growth outlining the maple's arms. Why did this turn my heart to a day of driving 2 lanes one early summer, vineyards sloping down toward the west, mustard bright on verges, and that strange sight blurring as I passed the rows on rows of Gravensteins? I had to stop and climb a fence. 100 little milk cartons, waxy, red and white, the kind from grade school cafeterias, each packed with hard cement and a silver hook to hang it from the lowest branches. They were young trees, not gnarled. There was no farmer to inquire of, no internet. I still don't know if this promoted extra fruit or made the picking easier or something else. Don't tell me. What I hold close is the memory of mystery and my delight. Now that was a long time ago. I don't know if they still do that, but it was the weirdest thing. And you know how your eyes, you're driving along thinking la la la, and then suddenly there's this weird, something's happening, you have to stop. I have to stop and find out what it is. Milk cartons. Old orchards. They're still scattered all through here, from the North Fork to the middle. Apples, mostly pears, a few peaches that don't fruit. And now and then you'll see a dogwood, half its branches down, but valiant, pink in spring. The houses, gone these 40, 50 years, lost to fire or just collapsed in on themselves. Unless you find a grave or a grandchild still in town, the people aren't remembered. Except now, when nights begin to cool, I like to think those heavy-laden limbs are bowing to the ones that planted them. I made a list of what I was doing because 67 and 7/8 is not a time to pretend you can remember a thing. This is called belonging. We're jumping around a little bit here. No more apples for a while. This is from my extremely beautiful book called The More Difficult Beauty. It comes with a photograph of me on the back, so you know it's me. I have that same dress, but I did not wear it today. Belonging. Long after I'd remembered most of it, after my mother had said, "You've wrecked my life," and Ellen asked me not to send her the poems because they ruined her sex life, and Tom wondered aloud if I was recalling a past life. After Nan said over the phone, "By the way, I don't believe you," and Henry told some of my friends at dinner that I'd always been a liar. After I'd gained 100 pounds and begun to carry it like an open window, and after enough time had passed to dull my anger down to a simmer, I walked to the kitchen one day, a sunny day, a Tuesday, heading for Haagen-Dazs or Ben & Jerry's, and caught my face in the mirror unawares, the rosy cheeks, slight clench in the jaw, and looked back at myself directly with my father's eyes, the purpose in them clear, all the power he carried toward my bed that I was bearing in the direction of ice cream. And I understood how humans do what they do, how they can't not do it. And at that moment, I loved my father, so dangerous and helpless, and loved myself for loving him again. And this is called Jupiter. You remember that planet that never was told it wasn't a planet anymore, like some planets. I used to work at Stinson Beach Books, and that's what's going on in this poem, partly. Jupiter, also a very nice book. You may need it in your library. Jupiter. I wake up at 4 with the bright white beads of a headache strung behind my eyes, shifting and clicking, an abacus counting out sorrows. Click, I am alone. Click, I haven't had children yet. Will anyone know me or love me? Regret. All morning I count change into the outstretched hands of strangers, as if I were spilling the letters of my name into their open palms, expecting a flicker of recognition. I bag their maps and books, give half a smile, directions. I wonder when my life will turn out. Where's the assurance we had as kids? when things made sense and dinner time always came at dusk, a call from the porch, the pale globes of wiffle balls glowing like moons at the lawn's shadowy edge. Outside the windows it's black and cool for August. Sagittarius chases the scorpion slowly across the southern sky. In Latin, the word for planet is wanderer. Jupiter pulls at the end of his orbit, invisibly leashed to the sun. But from here, it looks like he's weaving, trunk among the mythical pictures. Hunter, bears, dog, virgin, drawn by people already centuries dead. Night after night, I watch him roam. And in every American town, there are others, lying flat-backed in wheat fields and ballparks, empty lots, or leaning against a window like this, with a glass still half full of water, aspirin swallowed, foreheads pressed to the dark. This is called Farmer's Market. Yesterday I was so lonely I could barely walk, my friend being mobbed by her grandchildren as we made our way past the farmer's market's delicata squashes, the last tomatoes. I couldn't think what to buy, came home with nothing but sweet peppers, myriad colors in a single flavor, an elusive, solitary note. I watched her lay her cheek against the downy faces, saying, love, 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 and would have wept, except I'm dry of tears. I love how she loves them, and that she has them. I love them all from my arm's length distance, half familiar grandmother's friend with a laughing eye, glasses one might want to pluck from the top of her head. All that touch, that flesh, the body heat, fingers woven together. I am starving. So I don't want you to think that I'm always lonely and starving. So I thought I would move into a different department of subject matter. This is called the history lesson. As you undress for him, pull the mother of pearl circles one at a time from their bound holes, slowly enough that he can hear the diver splash in a distant ocean. Begin to remove the slippery layers of spun yarn, flax whose fibers were threshed and beaten, soaked in long summer days until they softened and became pliable, bowing to warp and weft. Don't rush. Let him feel the heat on his back. Slip off this delicate silk that carries the rocking rhythm of wheels and slap of wind in a sail in its memory. Not salt, but the shadow of salt. Not seabird's cry, but its echo. Don't speak. He'll understand, or he won't, how the living world has given itself to this moment. Cochineal of beetle's wings, onion skin gold, indigo secreted by ants darkening the dye bath. Cleopatra wore these clothes, Eurydice and Helen. They were always made by women, deft with shuttle and loom, redding, knitting, stitching, tatting, spinning miracles light as air out of nothing, to cover clavicles and nipples, the smalls of backs, the fierce thighs, embellishing dreams with gold thread and moonbeam. So now, as you drop the last shred and stand before him, he is every man, and you are every woman who ever lived. Sex. No one tells you how funny it is. The awkwardness of two bodies, various smackings and thumpings, a leg angled this way, an elbow that, the scrambling and sliding, all while you're trying to be cool, suave, romantic, in love. And the noises, like reruns of Flipper or Jacques Cousteau, gurgles and slurpings, moans cut off mid-note, as if a whale song was put on mute. And then the dreaded, untimely vaginal fart. Oh, darling, ooh, punctuated by yelps of pain, as fingernails scrawl up the lats or an eager knee clamps escaped tresses against the pillow. SOS is not the cry we're expecting to utter, but it ain't the movies here, bub, with their languid French kisses, deliberate tangos. Coordination flies out the window, and other things slide from their welcome place and have to somehow be reintroduced. Forget faking coming. It's all I can do to keep a straight face. Of this world. Sometimes I want to be the object, clouds passing over me and then bright sun, almost a shock at midday in late spring. I am still, I'm in motion, roofless, unceilinged, exposed. Rain on my face and the dogwoods, their pink bracts matching my cheeks. Promise of life, promise of wonder. We are equally beautiful and temporary. Everyone can say later that we were here. So if you are not my Facebook friend, you will not be aware that I go swimming a lot and brag about it constantly. I swim from now, started on May 15th, and I swim as close as I can get to Thanksgiving in a lake in Nevada County. And it's totally saved my life, saved my sanity, saved my mind, saved me from homicidal ideation all over town. It's, I'm sure, saved people's lives in Nevada County. This is called Self-Portrait at 2 a.m. Arms and shoulders so sore from swimming they wake me, want to talk about the lake, their life as fins, momentum through color that keeps changing, now blue topaz, now a dark aquamarine, and how nothing matters, not the guy I like, the work I do, or any thought I care to think. Only motion counts in their symmetric world. Hands thrust out in prayer and turn to pull the depth behind me. Legs frog kick, lungs compress and swell. The heart, light as air, empties, fills. I don't put my head underwater because I don't want to miss seeing things. And all my friends are like, where's caps, stuff? I don't want any more stuff. I'd take my suit off if I would not be arrested. So, now you know. If you want to come swimming with me, you can. This is called Fall Equinox. Because I'm larger than they, I move more slowly through the same water, breasting the slight chop of a windy afternoon, lifting my chin to miss a mouthful, watching their elbows flash, their heads turn every third stroke. They are dolphins, and I the blue whale. We are swimming, equally buoyant, wet together in late September, and no one can take this away from us. This clean sky after weeks of smoke, the way sun splashes the shoreline cottonwoods, flings its light between the darkest pines. No sailboats today, no outboards oiling the waves, neither osprey nor merganser. It's just three of us born on the colorful surface of something entirely clear, another mystery we won't solve, another layer of bliss to go with scissor kicks and cupped hands, the view only seen at eye level, the comfort of repetition and practice, our easy strength, our friendship, our willingness for one more day to suffer water this cold. So I was born in 1955, and my grandparents were born in 1899, my paternal grandfather, and 1902, I think his wife, my mum-mouse, my maternal grandmother. Don't ask. And then my paternal side, I think they were both born in 05, but it's not clear from the records, and my grandmother couldn't remember it. I think it's on a birth certificate as one thing, and she said, no, it was a different year. So I come from a lineage, and I'm going to read you two poems about the lineage. One is about my maternal grandparents, and I come from a family where one side was quite poor and the other side was quite wealthy. And if you don't think that was interesting, it was. This is from the poor side of things, and it's called Jesus. That restlessness when something goes wrong with the side of your tongue. So pain flavors the coffee, throwing off your whole American morning, sending you into a haze. To watch your body decline and fall, its own Rome, its secret civilization crumbling, is God's irony at work again, presenting versions of hell to distract you from the idea of death as absence and perhaps relief. A Buddhist might return to the breath. We lapsed Unitarians flee in our minds to Cambridge, lineage of social concern, of earnest privilege, back to the day our grandparents married, 1929, in the first parish, its central aisle lined by birch trees tucked into pots. It was September. Their tops arched, the pale yellow heart-shaped leaves barely moving as hymns rose up through the lacy branches. Did my grandfather, newly minted from divinity school, take his reverent friends to a nearby wood to dig the saplings? They had no money and wouldn't condone its use for decoration in any case. Did my grandmother, a Latin teacher, famed for hanging a pair of bloomers from Memorial Hall's flagpole at midnight, climb a ladder to tie together the topmost twigs? Was it her vision, a golden tunnel, a walk in the park? I know there were lots of cousins. I can imagine the helping and feeding. Later, when Leslie rose to minister there, did he look down the aisle mid-sermon and see his bride again step beneath this glow, the season brought inside, gorgeous and incongruous, the Word made flesh, almost, despite Unitarians not agreeing to believe in Jesus? Danny, as they called her, of the twinkling eye and tart remark, drawn up to her full 5 feet, dancing toward him. I wish there were photographs of that. So I'm going to close with a poem about my paternal grandparents. When I read this without announcing that, people think it's my parents, and they're getting everything wrong. And I'm going to try to just say it to you because once upon a time I did memorize it. We'll see. I better take my glasses off and have them be readier. The Dry Tortugas. They were building a house in the Dry Tortugas, less for the solitude there than the open eyes of a swallow-tailed hummingbird they had seen once on a fishing trip. The early 50s, he reeling in an oversized yellowfin, Humphrey Bogart facing the rail, facing something or other, the 1 foot on the rail and to have and have not. What's he facing? Facing the wind, 1 foot on the rail and to have and have not. She whistling the stuttered call of the Amazonian kingfisher and singing in Spanish to flocks of Bonaparte gulls. It comes to nothing in the end. The land paced off and measured, and 2 palms felled to expand the view. A road graded the requisite mile, and some of their friends fly down from New York to surprise them, gleeful and chic in their 4-seater Cessna. He's something exalted at chase. And later the bottles of rum and Appleton Gold, the bottles of Myers and Appleton Gold, sweat dark rings on the terrace flagstones, and someone's pink lipstick leaves delicate kiss prints along the rim of her glass. No one has told me what happened. His heart attack in Guatemala, her premonition about that wide and empty view. But they framed the architect's plans of the house, and this is what I inherit, a rendering in colored pencil, what they were dreaming before I was born. The End by Molly Fisk. Thank you. So I hear that someone might have a question, and I will make up an answer.
Feel free to ask questions.
They can be rude questions. If I don't want to answer them, I'll just tell you.
How do you organize your poems?
On my computer? I mean,
Yeah.
in real life?
Yeah.
I put them by year. Partly then I can encourage myself to write a few more in November if I haven't written very many. I used to have a file called Poems, and then New Poems, and then Very New Poems. And then I decided years would be a good idea. So they're all on my laptop. Susanna.
But I don't think you write your poems on a computer, do you?
I don't. I have done. I've probably written 20 on a computer, but mostly I write in notebooks. And then it depends. I write in cafes a lot, and if I'm still in the cafe and the poem looks like it's sort of trying to be done, then I'll copy it over. But I don't do more than 2 drafts in the notebook, then I put it on a computer.
Did you say your parents were born in 1905?
Grandparents. See, people get them mixed up. No, my parents were born in 1928 and 1932. Yeah. Thank you.
When did you start writing poetry?
In late November of 1990, when I was 35. I moved back to California after being gone for about 20 years, and all these things reminded me that they existed, like sour grass, and how after Thanksgiving suddenly all these red berries show up that you didn't think were anywhere, and they're, even down by the airport there are millions of pyrocanthus berries, and that did something to my brain, and I started remembering stuff about my childhood that I hadn't known about, that was not positive. And someone had given me Mary Oliver's book, American Primitive, and I hadn't read it because I was mad at the person. You know how that goes. Chew off your own foot, why don't you? Anyway, I read the book because I had just moved from Boston to Stinson Beach, and stood up and went over to the table and wrote a poem. Because her work, if you don't know her work, but most people do, is very accessible. It's very plain in its language, and it's very much directed at the general you. One of her poems begins, "You do not have to be good." And all of us think that we're being addressed directly. And there was something about that formatting that just read right into my bone marrow. So I've been writing for, how many years is that? 33 years? Almost half my life.
When did you learn to swim?
I went to Paul Daly Swim School in Corte Madera when I was 6, and I learned to swim, but then I forgot how to swim mostly. And I started swimming up at Scotts Flat about 14 years ago.
You forgot how to swim?
Well, I didn't forget, but I used to be able to do the crawl, and now I can't. I didn't forget breaststroke and side stroke, although I did have to look side stroke up on YouTube. And the person, the world is just a wonderful place. The person teaching me from a YouTube video how to do the side stroke laid himself down on a piano bench in order to illustrate what was going on. And how could I not fall in love with this idea? And I asked all these swimmers and they didn't know. It's like, so if you're on one side and you're scissoring your legs, is it always the same leg that goes on the top or on the bottom? And then when you go to the other side, and that was what I was trying to figure out. And I was about the same size then as I am now, which in terms of physics and dynamics means that if I put my upper leg forward to do the scissor, I roll over onto my face. So I had to learn how to do my bottom leg each direction I was going in. And about 5 years after learning that, now I can get in the water and I just do it, even after 6 months of winter. But it took some thinking, and then that guy on the piano bench, I will always be grateful. Yeah.
You mentioned that you like to read new poems in live, right? So that you can know whether it's working.
Right.
But is it the act of reading it in front of a group, or is it the reaction you're getting from the group that tells you that?
It's not the group's reaction.
Okay. It's the act
Because
of
groups are unreliable. They have their own taste, and sometimes they like things and they don't. And you do. It's like I can't control that, and I don't think it always has anything to do with the poem. And there are split decisions. It's really me saying, "Wait a minute, I think I said like 5 times earlier in this poem. I can't use like here again." Or something will just sound like a clunky rhythm. It's very mysterious. And I'm a big fan of mysteriousness. There's a lot of stuff I don't want to know about poetry. I don't have a graduate degree in poetry. I try hard not to read too much stuff about poetry and what it's for and how it works and stuff. I really need it to be coming from inside me. And then I can fix things or change them. But to have ideas ahead of time doesn't work for me at all. So it's great that I can use an audience in this kind of way. I actually didn't find anything that needed to be changed when I was reading to you guys. So that's good to know, especially since someone already took one of the poems.
Yeah.
You said you lived in Norway for a year.
Uh-huh.
Have you ever been tempted to translate Norwegian poetry or vice versa?
I haven't. It's a lot of work. I shy away from lots of work. But I did for a friend translate something. I think she had it translated and I sort of spiced it up a little bit for her. She's an American friend, but she's lived in Norway for 30 years and her books come out in Norwegian. So the two of us kind of worked on that together for a couple of months. That's the only thing I've tried to do. And I learned how to speak Norwegian. I took a semester in college. And then I learned it from television, children's television, when I was an au pair. And then I lived in a place that had a dialect, and the kids there, I worked in a ski hotel with all these teenagers, and they were always teaching me some slang word that I would then spring on the rest of the people, and everybody would laugh. So I don't think my Norwegian is particularly sophisticated. It may even be sailor Norwegian. But it's fun. Yeah.
How much, as far as editing, revising, rewriting, how much of that do you do, or does it vary depending on the poem?
So one answer is not enough. Because sometimes, I don't know why this is, but a lot of the stuff I write, it feels to me, has already been manufactured in the back of my head. And certainly I change things as I'm going on the page, and I've taught myself, but it took quite a while, to go back to poems and work on them. But I was one of those kids who was smart enough in school that I didn't really have to do a lot of extra work. I hate work. So it took me a while, and it was actually part of growing up, I think, for me to go back to the poems and say, now wait a minute. You can put better verbs in here, you can make it more musical, you can take out the asides that you like to put in and really nobody cares about the view. But for instance, Mary Oliver used to talk about doing 80 drafts of a poem. And I thought she was out of her mind. I might do 5. I've never done 20. And I'm sure there are people who think that's a bad idea. And they whisper about me secretly to their friends. But I don't actually care. So. And I've only been writing for 33 years. I've got more to learn. Maybe I'll learn more about that. Yeah.
When you read to your cats, are there the opinions of some cats you hold in higher esteem?
I'm supposed to be repeating the questions, which I just realized halfway through this. The question is, when I read to my cats, are there some cats whose opinions I take more seriously than others? When I read to my cats, all of them, bar none, remain asleep. So I don't know what their opinions are. Unless it's dinner time, dinner time is at 5, and anywhere after 1:30, people might be wandering around the house looking for their dinner. So I try to read to them in the morning, and they're always asleep. But it's a good question. I do love the poems more that have won me money than that haven't. And I have to be careful about that, because playing favorites with your own work is not a good idea. But, $1,000 prize is kind of fun.
Can you tell us about your anthology, California Fire and Water?
Sure.
Crisis Anthology?
I was Poet Laureate of Nevada County, and I didn't want to be because it seemed like a lot of work I'd already been doing. I was the first one, and they were very flattering, and I'm afraid I'm terribly susceptible to flattery. So I said yes, but I told them they had to pay me, and they had not been planning to do that, but they found a little money. And then notice came around that there was a prize for Poets Laureate, and I read the email, and it said it was for the Poets Laureate of states and cities and U.S. protectorates and tribal nations, and they didn't mention counties. And me being me, I wrote right back and said, what is going on here? Everybody I know is the Poet Laureate of a county. And I thought, well, fine, next year they'll put it in for counties, and I will be not a Poet Laureate, so I don't have to worry about this. But 3 minutes later, they put out another announcement and said also counties. And so then I was like, oh shoot, now that I made all this noise, I have to apply. And it was like 3 days before the deadline when I did apply, and so this was this is the spring, like February of 2019. And I was going to be Poet Laureate through April, but I applied anyway, but I was like, but this isn't going to work. If I win, I'm going to not be the Poet Laureate anymore, so I'll have to make up something about that. But we had just had the Paradise Fire, and I was standing in the parking lot of our local grocery store, SPD, and I thought, well, all right, if I have to do this, which I do, what I would want is to do something that had a benefit to the kids in the world, but especially in Nevada County, who lost houses in the fire, who were in trouble because of the fire. And at the time, we did not have a California State Poet Laureate. So I actually just said, forget Nevada County. I'm doing this for the whole state. And I had worked with California poets in the schools, so I knew how to get teachers into schools. And they always need money, so I knew if I were going to get a grant and have some money, I could send a bunch of teachers all over the state into the schools. I knew how to make books because I self-published my radio essays. And I just know how to get people organized to do things. So I decided, why don't we put together an anthology of all ages? We'll have the teachers go into the schools and get kids to write about disasters, fire and water, whatever it is. And also I'll get a bunch of adult poems, and we put this anthology together. And I say we because there were 4 other editors helping me do all this. There were about 50 teachers, And we got everything organized. I have never worked so hard in my life. It was kind of like going to your own graduate school. So from September of 19 all the way through January of 2020, I got this book done. And I was like, it's got to. And then I set up 20 readings all over the state for April of 2020. And then it didn't work because we had COVID. So the idea was to, because the grant had paid for this, I didn't have to make money selling those books. So I sent them out in a big wave to state libraries, school libraries, and prison libraries all over the state of California. And I still do that more in a kind of haphazard way. And certainly people sometimes will ask for them and I'll send them out. So if you need a book called California Fire and Water, my email is mollyfisk@gmail.com. You have to pay $3 shipping now. Anybody else? Yeah?
Did you ever see a bald eagle while swimming?
I can't hear you. Say that again.
Did you ever see a bald eagle while swimming?
I saw a bald eagle while swimming on Tuesday. The question was, do I see a bald eagle when swimming? There are a bunch of ospreys up there, and there's at least one bald eagle this year. Yeah. There's nothing like watching a bald eagle fly over a lake, and everybody gets very quiet and still. I mean, it's really fascinating. And if you're in the water, you get more of a feeling of being prey than you ever do anywhere else. I once had an osprey dive right next to my head from where the camera is from me right now. And I didn't see him coming. I was looking the other way. It was terrifying. And gorgeous, of course. And you don't, you never remember enough. You're too surprised to pay attention. Anyway.
Well,
More?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad you're not the city attorney. That's very good.
All right. Thank you so much for being here and for listening. We're going to say goodbye to all of our friends online. Bye, friends. Definitely follow us on social media, West Trestle, Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, then you should like it and you should follow us and share it and all those things. We would really appreciate it. And I think that's it. All right. Thanks for listening.